even though the procedures that we perform remain the same, depending on the year, the coding answers differ. If you don't know the current coding rules, it can lead to confusion, delay, or decrease in payment and frustration. In this video, I'm going to discuss the current guidelines for urodynamics coding so you're not missing out on appropriate payment and so that can be more efficient, so that you can be more efficient with your coding and billing. And for those of you who do not know me, my name is John Lin. I'm a urologist in Gilbert, Arizona, also your humble host of the Thriving Urology Practice Facebook group, where we crowdsource practice management solutions for everyone's benefit. And it is all for free. And you know what they say, if it's free, I'll take 3. All right. The inspiration for this video comes from a question that was posed in one of the urology groups, if you will. And the question goes something like this. This came from a physician. When billing for UDS with TC when nurses perform, can we bill the same CPTs when the provider does interpretation? So let me decipher that for you. When a nurse performs urodynamics, just does the procedure, and you want to bill for the technical component, TC means technical component. The physician is asking, can we bill the same CPTs when the qualified health professional or the physician, the urologist, performs the interpretation? And the short answer is, of course, yes, but we are making a lot of assumptions, and you know what happens when you assume. So the assumptions are, number 1, this is done in the office setting, place of service 11, and number 2, you are also assuming that the same physician was present for the supervision of the nurse performing the technical component of the urodynamics procedure, and the physician is also interpreting the procedure itself. So this is actually the 2023 National Physician Fee Schedule Relative Value File, April 2023 release. And some of the CPT codes for urodynamics are listed. And if you look at the PCTC indicator in column N as in Nancy, I've highlighted some of the CPT codes. And if you look carefully here, these are all place of service PCTC indicator 1. And so what does that mean? PCTC of 1 means, number 1 means diagnostic test and radiology services. And that also means modifier 26 and TC or technical component modifiers are valid for those particular CPT codes. You also have to remember that when you build just the TC component, there's no work RVU value involved in that TC component. So the physician, we are assuming that the same physician who's asking the question was present for the supervision of the nurse and then subsequently does the interpretation of the urodynamics procedure. So that first part where the nurse does the procedure, we are assuming that this was done on a different day. A TC modifier was used for the typical urodynamics codes. And on a subsequent different day, the interpretation was done, which is the modifier 26, also known as the professional component of the procedures, the CPT codes, was done. So that's the second assumption. And third assumption is that the same physician or the group to which the physician belongs owns the equipment, and the qualified health professional or the urologist or the physician does the interpretation of the urodynamics that was performed by the nurse. So the problem is, the question may seem really, really simple and straightforward, and I've said this before, the more you know, the more you understand the crazy world of coding and billing, the less able I am or you are to be able to just answer the questions in a straightforward fashion, because you have to, the questions lack the depth, because the person asking the question doesn't really have a full picture of the CPT coding environment. the more you understand, the more you know, the more difficult it is to simply answer the question yes or no. So it is crazy. It is confusing, but that's the way it is. So what are some of the codes that are used for urodynamics? So typically there are 51728. 51728 is complex CMG. 51797 is voiding pressure studies. 51784, anal or urethral EMG, and 51741, complex uroflow. And let me show you something that is pretty cool. This is called a bundling matrix, and this is from AUAcodingtoday.com. What I have done is I put in the 4 typical urodynamics codes in something called the bundling matrix. I entered the codes here, the codes to bundle, and I selected non-facility RVU. You will notice that 51728 is listed here first, followed by 797, 784, and 741. This is actually automatically rank ordered for me. I can enter the codes in any order I want, and this, like I did here, and this bundling matrix will automatically rank order these for me. So if you have a multiple procedure type of a situation, the automatic reduction obviously comes into play. So you want to put the highest value code first, and that is what the bundling matrix has done. So highly, just such a useful tool, including you can look up CPT codes, HCPCS codes, ICD-10 codes, explanation of modifiers, etc. And if you hover over, you can't see it on your screen. If you hover over this code, it actually gives you the description on the right. If you click on the code, it'll give you the CPT description and the status of the code, etc. Now let's go back to the bundling matrix. If you go back here, the global, this has a 0-day global, ZZZ global, which means the code is related to another service and is always included in global of the other service. Or if you have XXX, global service concept does not apply to this code. So very, very useful tool that I frequently visit and use to help me understand the complex world of coding and billing. So if you look at the complex world of billing and coding and the bundling matrix, if you enter those codes, it'll rank order them for you and spit out the order in which you need to bill so that you're not shortchanging yourselves. Okay, in the past, splitting the TC and modifier 26, also the PC, changed the payments in a more favorable fashion to the qualified healthcare professionals, also known as the urologists or physicians. So QHPs, same as physician, same as provider, whatever you want to call it. Medicare calls it QHP, so that's what I'm calling it. In the past, when you split the billing between TC and PC, modifier 26, if you split the billing, it resulted in a more favorable payment to the qualified healthcare professionals. So it was recommended to split bill when and if appropriate. If you have the nurse perform the procedure on one day and then you interpret the results on another day, you're recommended to split bill. Well, that has changed. So let me share with you the background or the proof or the backup for the recommendation that I'm currently suggesting. And this comes from Medicare Learning Network Matters, SE Sierra Echo 17023, published on February 1st of 2019. It didn't change anything. It just gave clarification regarding how you're supposed to code and bill on the date of the service on professional claims. And if you scroll down, and let me get to that right here. If you scroll down, you will see radiology services. And same thing with surgical anatomical pathology. Usually you're splitting the performance of the procedure or provision of the service from the actual interpretation of the results of that service. So there's the TC-PC component going on, the professional and the technical component split. And this section reads, Typically, radiology services have two separate components, and same thing with urodynamics. A professional and technical component. These services will have a PCTC indicator of 1 on the Medicare Physician Fee Schedule, MPFS, relative value file, which I showed you guys earlier. The technical component is billed on the date the patient had the test performed. When billing a global service, the provider can submit the professional component with a date of service reflecting when the review and interpretation is completed, or can submit the date of service as the date the technical component was performed. And here's the key right here. I'm going to highlight it so that you can see it. And I'll read it again. When billing a global service, such as a urodynamic, one of the urodynamics codes, the QHP can submit the professional component with a date of service reflecting when the review and interpretation is completed, or can submit the date of service as the date the technical component was performed. So this is very different than in the past. And this goes on to say that this will allow ease of processing for both Medicare and the supplemental payers. And if the provider did not perform a global service and instead performed only one component, the date of service for the technical component would be the date the patient received the service, obviously, and the date of service for the professional component would be the date the review and interpretation is completed. Obviously, Mr. Obvious, right? So this billing the urodynamics codes either on the date that the technical component or when the procedure was performed, or when the QHP interprets the results, solves a couple of problems. Number one, the supervising versus interpreting physician discrepancy between the procedure date and the date of interpretation, that is gone because you're picking one day. Now, if you pick the date that the urodynamic results are interpreted, which may be a different date than when the nurse performed the procedure, then the patient the astute patient who may look at the EOB, explanation of benefits, may notice that the date that he or she had the urodynamics differs from the billing date of the claim. So that may lead to a little bit of confusion, but how many people actually look at the date of the billing versus the date when the procedure was done? Not many. So that is not too much of an issue when you are doing it this way. And the second problem that it solves is that it solves that payer confusion. If you split the billing between TC and PC, you're submitting two separate claims on two separate dates using the same CPT codes with different modifiers. And sometimes the payers may become confused, or their computers may become confused. So you may get delay in payment. And really, with the MLN that you just read, there's really no good reason to do the split billing. In addition, there's no favorable payment when you split bill in 2023. So why cause the confusion? And my recommendation is that whenever you have a urodynamics procedure that was done, in 2023, the payment is the same, whether you split bill or you bill with one global payment. So my recommendation is to bill it on the date that the interpretation was done by the physician. Bill it on the date the interpretation was done by the physician, not the date of the actual procedure, but do it on the date of the actual interpretation and creation of that report. So you actually completed the entire global, and then you do the interpretation, right? So this solves that problem. You're not billing the TC, you're not billing the global code when you actually does just part of the code, the TC component, if you bill it on the date of the TC, the procedure, when the procedure was done. Instead, you're billing it after the procedure has been done and after the physician has interpreted the results of the urodynamics. So that means you're not running afoul of, well, you haven't really done the interpretation, and yet you're billing for both the professional component and the technical component. So that solves our problem if you bill it on the date of the interpretation. All right. And also, it's obviously easier for payer tracking because you have one set of CPT codes for all the urodynamic CPTs that you performed, and you're billing it off of as a single global package instead of splitting it into TC and PC. And then number three, this makes it a lot easier for you as the coder and biller, because now you just have to track one code. And also, you need to keep in mind, for the physicians who are listening to this, you have to be present when the nurse is actually performing the procedure. So there has to be a supervising physician when the TC is being performed by the nurse. All right. So if you want to split bill, you would bill it under that supervising physician. But the current recommendation is to not do the split billing, but bill it under the physician who's interpreting the results. All right. So hopefully that makes it a little bit clearer as to why the current recommendation in 2023 is to bill it on the date when the urodynamic results are interpreted and not when the procedure was actually performed. So in the past, you may recall that it was recommended that the billing among the four codes to be split between TC and PC. However, in 2023, the recommendation is to bill it as a single global code. As you can see, that these rules change. And it's interesting that you can talk about the same procedures being performed and yet have different rules recommending that you code differently. So the rules change even though the procedures that we perform remain the same. And it is confusing. It is difficult to keep track and keep up with all the changes. And one of the ways that I keep updated is obviously being a sponge and try to read up and keep up with the coding changes. The other way that I do, something else that I do to keep up with the changes, is by attending the Urology Advanced Coding and Reimbursement Seminar. And this year in 2023 and also January 24, it will be number one, December 2023 in Vegas. So December 2023 in Vegas, as usual. And in January 2024, it will be in New Orleans. Urology Advanced Coding and Reimbursement Seminar put on by the Painters. Other than being a speaker at these seminars, I am not financially related with this seminar or PRS network. I'm just a hired gun, and I show up and present and participate in these courses. I had attended these courses probably for a decade before I started going on stage to give presentations at UACRS. So you have to keep up. As a coder and biller, and unfortunately as a urologist, you have to keep up with the rules and changes so that you're not spinning your wheels, so that you are paid for everything that you already perform. So I highly recommend that you consider attending some of these courses so you can keep updated. And of course, I highly recommend that you join the Thriving Urology Practice Facebook group if you're watching this on YouTube. But if you're watching this live, I've got some questions that are being asked in the live stream, so I'm going to try to read them. Karen says, we have an RN specialized in urodynamics come into our practice one day a month. She performs the urodynamics and the physician interprets. We use no modifiers and are always paid. However, 51784, the EMG, is paid if the diagnosis is specific to that test. We always bill 51728, 51797, 51784, and 51741. Thank you so much for the comment. Dr. Groda says, can physician assistant bill at 100% for these codes? Well, PAs, if they're billing incident 2, may be able to do so, but if they're doing it on their own, then they're taking that 15% reduction. Dr. Applebaum says, this is great. Do you mind sharing a copy of the MLN? Yes, I will definitely share that in the comment section so that you can click on it and be led right to the MLN. And Karen says, I should add, however, modifier 51 is added to 51784 and 51741 per the guidelines that have been given to me. Yep. And also keep in mind that these recommendations are for Medicare. You have to follow the claims guidelines put forth by the private payers because they play games. They may not follow the NCCN guidelines, the National Correct Coding Network Initiative guidelines. They may not follow those guidelines. So you have to play the game with your individual payers because they may want to do things differently than what is recommended by CMS. So as usual, thank you so much for the comments. Thank you so much for watching. And I really appreciate the privilege of your time. Please take care of yourself and take care of each other. Bye-bye.